Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive, all about getting started with Airbnb hosting.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about all those, first steps you need to take, using all the info from those Airbnb guides and expert advice you sent in.
It's like putting together all the pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. So you can build your own Airbnb success story. And we'll be covering everything you need to know, from setting up your profile to avoiding those common mistakes that we all make when starting out.
Those rookie mistakes.
Yes, exactly. So let's jump right in with the first crucial step: registering on Airbnb.
Yeah, that's the starting line.
So how complicated is this? Is it like a super long process?
It's surprisingly simple. You would think it'd be this big ordeal, right?
Right, like mountains of paperwork.
Not at all. Creating an account is super straightforward. And the best part, you ready for this? It's totally free to list your property.
Okay, now that's a good starting point. Free is always good. So we've got the account set up. But I'm guessing there's a little more to it than that, right? Definitely. Your profile. It's not just a formality. It's your chance to shine. It's like your digital handshake with potential guests. Got to make a good first impression.
So it's all about making your profile stand out.
Exactly. Think about what makes you want to book a place when you're browsing Airbnb. Like a clear photo of the host, a warm, inviting smile, a little bit of personality shining through. That's what we want to achieve.
Makes sense. Because honestly, who wants to book a place with a host who looks like a blurry shadow in their profile pic
Yeah,
and has zero info about themselves?
right. Nobody wants to stay with a mystery host.
Exactly. So we need to put our best foot forward. How do we do that?
Highlight what makes you a great host. Showcase your property's unique features. Let your personality shine through in the photos and descriptions. Tell a story, basically.
Okay, I love that storytelling approach.
Huh?
So we've got the personality, we've got the story. What about that profile picture? Any tips for choosing the right one?
It all comes down to the kind of guests you want to attract. I mean, a warm, welcoming smile is always a good bet, right?
Sure. Like, come on in, make yourself at home.
Exactly. But if you're trying to attract more adventurous travelers, maybe a photo of you like hiking up a mountain or exploring a local market might resonate better.
Ooh, I like that. So it's about aligning your picture with your target audience.
You got it. Now that you've got that profile polished and ready to attract those guests, let's shift gears and talk about getting your property ready.
Okay, time to roll up our sleeves.
Yeah, this is where the real work begins.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming, right?
No, not at all. Just focus on the essentials: cleanliness, functionality, and creating a welcoming atmosphere. Think about what makes you feel at home when you travel.
So sparkling clean bathrooms, comfy
Mhm.
beds, maybe a welcome basket with some local goodies.
You got it. You don't need to break the bank to create an unforgettable experience for your guests. Sometimes it's those simple touches that make all the difference.
It's all about the details. Speaking of details and maybe breaking the bank, let's talk about staging for photos I've heard that could be make or break for attracting bookings.
Absolutely. High-quality photos are crucial, but here's the thing. You don't need to hire a professional photographer. Just work with what you've got. Natural light is your best friend. Open those curtains. Let the sunshine in declutter. Add pops of color. Make your space look inviting and irresistible in the photos.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Any other pro tips for making those photos really pop?
Here's one. Spend a night in your own property before you list it.
Really?
Yeah. Experience it from a guest's perspective. You'll be surprised what you notice. Things you might have missed before, like a squeaky door or light creeping in through the curtains in the morning.
It's like a test run.
Exactly. A test run for the full guest experience. And speaking of guest experience, we've got to talk about the white linen wisdom.
White linen wisdom.
Eh.
Okay, fill me in. I've heard something about white sheets and towels.
Exactly. There's a reason luxury hotels use white linens. It just gives off that vibe of cleanliness, freshness, and professionalism.
Okay, it's all about creating that feeling of a high-end experience.
Exactly. Plus, white linens are incredibly practical. You can bleach them without worrying about colors fading. It's a win-win.
Form and function all in one.
Uh.
Now let's move on to something that might not be as exciting, but it's definitely just as important: setting house rules.
Ah, yes, house rules. The foundation of a harmonious host-guest relationship.
Definitely. Okay, house rules. It's like laying down the law, right?
Well, not exactly law, but more like guidelines.
Yeah, guidelines for a smooth and respectful experience for both sides.
Exactly. It's all about setting clear expectations up front, so everyone's on the same page.
Right, so no one ends up feeling uncomfortable or like they're stepping on toes.
Exactly. House rules help prevent those awkward conversations or misunderstandings that can sometimes come up, you know?
Yeah, like having to be the bad guy and remind guests about noise levels or extra visitors. No one wants to do that.
Nobody wants to be the fun police. So yeah, let's talk about what kind of house rules we're talking about here.
Okay, what are the essential?
Well, some of the big ones are noise restrictions, especially if you're in a shared building or a quiet neighborhood. You want to be respectful of your neighbors, right?
Absolutely. Makes sense. What else?
You definitely want to be clear about the number of guests allowed. No surprise parties.
Right. Unless it's for the host.
Exactly. And, whether smoking is permitted, and if so, where.
Okay, standard stuff. It's all about setting those boundaries from the get-go.
Exactly. And the good news is Airbnb has a great feature where guests actually have to acknowledge your house rules before they can even book.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Ah.
So there's no excuse for not knowing the rules?
Exactly. It takes some of the pressure off the host from having to constantly remind guests.
Definitely. So what about some of the less obvious house rules? Any tips for those?
Yeah, here's a good one. You might want to consider including a rule about prohibiting undeclared guests.
Undeclared guests.
What do you mean?
You know, those surprise visitors who show up unannounced.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Yeah. It's a way to avoid awkward situations and ensure, who's staying at your property at all times. Makes sense. It's a safety thing, too.
Right. Definitely.
It's about knowing who's on your property for everyone's peace of mind. Now let's talk about early check-ins and late checkouts.
Okay, that's always a tricky one.
Yeah. Accommodating guests is great, but it can also really mess with your cleaning schedule or even impact your insurance coverage in some cases.
Right. You want to be flexible,
Yeah.
but you also have to protect yourself.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
What works for you and your business model? Maybe you offer a small window for flexibility or build in buffer time between bookings.
Okay, so it's about finding that sweet spot. Now, what about the lockbox dilemma?
The lockbox dilemma.
Yeah, is it really necessary to change the code after every guest? It seems like a bit of a hassle.
That's a great question. And
Yeah.
honestly, there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on your comfort level.
Yeah.
Changing the code after each guest is definitely more secure, but it can also be really time-consuming.
Right, so it's about weighing the security benefits against the practicality of it all. Exactly.
Yeah.
You could consider a smart lock that allows you to change the code remotely, or maybe choose a lockbox location that's both accessible and discreet.
So there are options.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's dive into something that can be a bit of a head-scratcher for new hosts.
Pricing. Where do we even begin?
Pricing can definitely feel intimidating at first, but it's all about breaking it down into manageable steps. The first thing to understand is your base price.
Base price?
Yeah, that's the price that guests see when they're searching for listings in your area. It's that initial figure that catches their eye.
Okay, makes sense.
And the key to setting your base price is research. Check out comparable listings in your neighborhood. What are other hosts charging? What amenities do they offer?
So it's about finding that competitive edge while also reflecting the value of your own property.
Exactly. Don't forget,
Yeah.
you're not just selling a space, you're offering an experience. Think about those unique features, the location, the overall vibe you're creating, right? It's the whole package. So once we've done our research and figured out our base price, are there any tools or resources that can help us keep things running smoothly?
Absolutely. This is where technology comes in handy. Dynamic pricing tools can be a game changer.
Dynamic pricing, I've heard of that,
Yeah.
but how does it actually work?
Basically, these tools automatically adjust your prices based on demand and seasonality. So for example, during peak season, your prices might go up a bit. And during slower months, they might go down.
So instead of constantly monitoring and adjusting prices manually, we can let the tool do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of pricing, and it frees up your time to focus on other important aspects of hosting.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from
Mhm.
setting house rules to figuring out pricing. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to hear more about avoiding those common beginner mistakes. Those things we've all probably done at some point.
We've all been there. It's part of the learning process.
It's definitely a learning curve.
Good day.
But hey, that's what this deep dive is all about.
Right.
Sharing those insights and helping each other avoid those pitfalls.
Absolutely. Learning from those who've walked the path before you can save you a lot of time and headaches.
Exactly. So what kind of beginner mistakes should we be on the lookout for?
One common mistake is trying to do too much too soon,
Okay, like spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly. Some new hosts get so excited they want to list their property on every platform imaginable, thinking that'll bring in more bookings.
Right. Cast a wider net.
Exactly. But the thing is, it can actually backfire. You end up with diluted reviews,
Yeah.
inconsistent listing quality, and ultimately less visibility for all that hard work.
So it's better to focus on one platform, really nail it down,
Yeah,
and then maybe branch out later.
exactly. Quality over quantity, for sure.
Okay, that makes sense. What other beginner mistakes should we avoid?
Another big one is not being detailed enough in your listing. Guests want to know exactly what they're getting.
Right. No surprises.
Exactly. Be upfront about any quirks or limitations your property might have. Is there limited parking? Is the Wi-Fi a bit spotty? Are there stairs to climb? Those kinds of things.
It's all about setting realistic expectations and being transparent.
Exactly. Transparency is key. It builds trust. And it helps you avoid negative reviews from guests who feel like they weren't given the full picture.
Okay. Transparency check. What else?
Oh, this one's a bit unexpected, but trust me on this. Create a comprehensive folder with user manuals for all the appliances in your property.
Really? Even for things like the coffee maker?
Especially for things like the coffee maker. You'd be surprised how many guests, especially international travelers, might not be familiar with certain appliances.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it shows that you've really put thought into the guest experience.
So exactly. It's those little touches that can really elevate a stay from good to great.
Okay, so we've talked about those beginner mistakes. But are there any inspiring stories of new hosts who really knocked it out of the park? Those success stories that make you think, hey, I can do this too.
Oh, absolutely. I love this story about a new host who didn't actually own a property.
Wait, what? So how did they get into the Airbnb game without a property to list?
They became a co-host.
A co-host.
Yeah, they offered their services to establish hosts for free, helping with everything from communication to cleaning to managing bookings.
Wow, they worked for free.
They did. But think about it. It was like an apprenticeship. They gained invaluable experience, learned the ropes from seasoned hosts, and built up their confidence without any financial risk.
That's actually brilliant. So by the time they were ready to launch their own listing, they were already pros.
Exactly. They hit the ground running, avoided those common pitfalls, and quickly became a top-rated host.
That's such an inspiring story. It shows that there's more than one way to get into the Airbnb game.
Definitely. There's always a way to learn and grow.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap those 5 essential steps for Airbnb hosting success, just to make sure we've got everything covered.
Sounds
Step 1, create an amazing profile. Make it personal. Showcase your strengths. Choose a profile picture that makes you look like someone guests would love to stay with.
perfect first impressions matter.
Exactly. Step 2, get that property guest ready. Sparkling clean, functional, and inviting. And don't forget to stage it for those eye-catching photos.
Attention to detail is key.
Absolutely. Step 3, establish those clear house rules right from the start.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. Exactly. Things like noise levels, guest limits, smoking policies, all that good stuff.
And don't forget to address those undeclared guests. Head them off at the pass.
Exactly. Step 4, pricing. It can be a bit daunting, but remember, research is your best friend. Figure out your base price based on comparable listings, and consider using those dynamic pricing tools to stay ahead of the game.
Work smarter, not harder.
Love it. And finally, step 5, learn from the best. Avoid those beginner mistakes by taking a page from seasoned hosts. And never underestimate the power of clear and open communication with your guests.
Communication is key to a successful host-guest relationship.
Absolutely. So there you have it, folks. Your 5-step guide to launching your very own Airbnb adventure. It's all about taking those first steps, doing your research, and embracing the journey.
And remember, have fun with it. Hosting can be an incredibly rewarding experience.
So true. Whether you're looking to earn some extra income, meet new people from around the world, or simply share your love of your city, Airbnb can open up a whole new world of possibilities.
So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start hosting.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Airbnb hosting. We hope you found it helpful. And remember, if you have any questions or want to share your own hosting experiences, feel free to reach out. We're always here to help.
Happy hosting, everyone.